So hey guys, welcome back. A little bit of a different video today. Andrew and I are down here in our basement and wanted to show you guys our worm farms, I guess for a lack of any better term. I don't really know what we would call it, but like our worm farm, our casting farms. Andrew has kind of spearheaded this and has been doing the legwork on everything. So I am going to kind of refer to him on it. I'm super proud of all the work he's done. We've already gotten one batch of castings out of here. So I'm going to pass over to him and have him kind of walk you guys through our worms and our worm castings.
So, yep, as we had mentioned earlier, we started off with a batch and were able to harvest already. We started off actually with 4 pounds of red wigglers. Those guys we broke up into 2 separate bins to give us, just 2 kind of test environments in case something happened, maybe chemically or with the bedding that caused us to lose the batch or lose, an entire colony. So what we did was we broke it up into 2. In case something like that happened, we would learn from those mistakes and kind of adjust the second bin to avoid that from happening. Hopefully, we have enough follow-up to catch that from happening. But right now, I think we check in on them twice a week or so. Sometimes once a week if we get caught up in a lot of different projects. But these guys are really self-sufficient, and if you set them up with enough bedding and enough moisture in the environment, they should be good to kind of run themselves and be self-sufficient. You don't really need to add too much weekly or daily. Actually, too much disruption could cause them to have less production. If you open the bin up too much and expose them to light, they'll tend to dig deep to the lower ends of the environment or the bedding, which typically that's where their worm castings will end up dropping to. So they won't be eating or producing much if they're in their worm castings. You want them at pretty close to the top or where their fresh bedding is so they can work through what you put in there. They can eat it and kind of start to break that down and turn it into the stuff that you would add into your soil with worm castings and whatever mixture you end up putting that into. For us, we tend to use worm castings for seedlings and for bed amendments if we have enough to do so. But we just started this process in March, so we don't have really too much to spread around, or as much as we'd like to have. We'd love to expand this as much as possible, but right now these guys are a great production, and I think we're able to give them just enough, just different garden scraps and things that they enjoy with what we have right now. So we'll see if we continue to expand in the future. Right now, these guys we refreshed back in August 1st, I believe, right at the first week of August. And so they've been sitting in this bedding for about 3 months, and they are ready for a bedding refresh. The bedding that's in there right now really does look like worm castings. It feels like worm castings. I'll show you what that looks like here in just a moment. But if you see most of the material in there broken down, you may see some thicker material that may have not been broken down entirely just yet, and that's okay. Typically, that's why you want to have small pieces of matter inside the bins. You want to make sure that they are able to break them down and actually bite into them. Large pieces of wood and things like that will tend to stay in there for a bit longer. So really quick, I want to go over how we house the colonies here. So we have the 2 bins that we use. So we drilled a bunch of holes on the top 2 inches of the bins here just to give them some aeration. You don't want them to be anaerobic where they're not getting fresh oxygen in the bins. We also drilled a bunch of holes in the top of the bins as well, and in the bottom of the bins. Those I can't really show you right now, but those are for drainage in case the matter in there gets too moist. It'll have a space to be able to drain that out to. We typically don't have that. That's something that you don't necessarily want. It tends to get anaerobic, and it's not really good to put in your soil, especially if you don't have some kind of bubbler or something to keep it from getting anaerobic, and we don't have that kind of system. So we keep it, moist enough for them to be able to move around and feel comfortable, but not enough to have extra, drainage at the bottom or have that necessary. But we keep it just in case. So really quick, I just wanted to go over what we're adding in as new bedding, just to give you guys perspective as to what the bin looks like now and what was going into the bins. This is pretty much what I added last time. So this is some peat moss. They actually eat the peat moss, and it gives them a little bit of drainage and moisture retention. You know how peat moss works in your soil, it works in here as well, has the same benefits. The shavings here, these are probably the best shavings I've ever had. I used to cut these with scissors, but we got a really strong paper shredder that does cardboard. It doesn't recommend to do cardboard, so I'm not going to say the brand or anything like that, but this is really fine, and it helps them to get through it quicker. These pockets of cardboard that are, kind of spongy and thick are going to create more air pockets for them to be able to breathe while they dig around in the peat moss and the soil. And then in here, I just went outside and got some natural matter from outside. It's fall, so we have some leaves. I got some natural topsoil from our, outside, pretty much, just to help them. It's grit, essentially, for them to be able to eat and digest other things. So it's good for them to have some natural soil as well as the peat moss. So, okay, and this is what it looks like now after 90 days, essentially, of the worms getting through the bedding that I was showing you guys earlier. It's very dark. I don't know if you guys know what worm castings look like finished, but maybe we'll be able to show a photo. But it's we haven't filtered through. Usually we filter through this stuff with a it's like 1/4 inch mesh galvanized wire that I use to filter through it, and then it becomes a bit more fine, and you'll be able to add that to your whatever you want. But for us, it's seedling mix, and that's why we want it to be as fine as possible. But it's really dark. It looks like they've gone through it. We just added some what is this, radish tops? Yeah, radish tops and some radish. They usually get fresh garden droppings, but yeah, it's just really dark. And it looks like they are ready for some new bedding. There's some life in here. I'll try to dig a little bit up. I don't like to disrupt too much, and that's where they're kind of hanging, is the bottom. A lot of movement. Yeah, the bottom definitely feels like worm castings. Look how big some of them are. All right, so I actually thought of kind of a game plan here to get things added in. I'm gonna kind of pull some of the worm castings apart, so it's gonna be pulled to one side, and then I'm gonna start to lasagna some of the new bedding in, so they have some opportunity to get in there and be able to feel comfortable. If I were to throw like chunks of cardboard shavings in there, it'd be hard for them to maneuver without having the mixture of the peat moss and everything else to give some aeration and some, wiggle room. So we'll go ahead and get started here. I'm gonna pull some of this soil to one side. Yeah. So what I did so far was I pulled a lot of what I think is basically mostly finished worm castings here, and now I'm going to start to add some of the new bedding on this side. Hopefully they start to migrate to this side over the next few weeks, and I can pull some of the worm castings out easily versus having to deal with filtering through the wormy. So we've done that before and it was successful, so that's what I'm going to try again and see if that works. I'm going to start off with some peat moss here. Okay, give it a base there, and then I'm going to add a little bit of leaves and some of that grit that I was talking about here. There's some leaves. Get it mixed in a little bit. Okay. Now some shavings. That's kind of what you want it to look like, just a good mixture of everything, I guess. And then it's going to keep layering that in. More peat moss. Gonna dig deep in this bucket here and get some of that topsoil. This is what we grow in, guys. This is what I don't know what you grow in, but that's what we grow in, is basically rocks. But it's grit for, I guess I don't want like literal rocks in there. But that's where we're at, you know? So yeah, we put the topsoil in there because it's grit for the worms. Essentially, it's like, if you think about your chickens, and if you have chickens and they need grit sometimes, if they're being grass-fed, if they're out there eating things that are not just the grain that they'll typically get for food, they'll need grit to help their gizzard break down and basically crush some of the food particles and make it easier to digest. All right, so I just grabbed a little bit of water. It looks like the peat moss just needs to be a little bit more moist. Like I said, you don't want the bedding to be so moist that if you squeeze it, you get water coming out, but you do want it to feel like a drenched sponge is what they say. But for me, I think I want it a little drier than that. I think it's comfortable for them. If it's more than that, I usually see my worms try to come to the top of the bin, and they'll end up at the top of the lid and trying to come out of the bin. And usually for me, that's a sign that they're not comfortable in their environment. So this is what they've kind of enjoyed. And so, you know, peat moss does need a little bit to get activated and start to absorb some stuff and feel like soil, I guess, or feel like dirt. So that's what it needs. I did moisten it a little bit before I put it in there, but I think it just needs a little bit more. And we'll leave this usually down here in a secure place, just as a backup in case we need to add more bedding at a later time. And for the shredding, we did some paper and we did some cardboard. You know, we figured it's a good mix to help them just have some variety to eat through. All right, I think we're pretty good. All right, so this one's good. Typically, we dropped it here for the footage or to show you guys what's going on, but they're propped up, so it's easier to kind of, you know, follow up with and more approachable for us. We tend to, you know, make things as easy as possible for us to access and build into routines. If you don't make things easier for you, you're less likely to follow up and check on it. So if you are making a worm bin, you know, they do suggest kind of putting them outside in the summer where your garden is, so that it's easy for you to follow up with and check on. For us, we keep them in the basement in our seating space, so it just makes sense for us. We're usually down here anyway because we're starting something for the next season. So they're propped up. They're propped up at our eye level to be able to follow up with and check on easily in a place that we're walking by daily. So it just makes sense for us. All right, so now we're just going to switch over to the second bin and repeat the process here. We'll show you some quick footage of what that looks like, and I'll jump right into it. Well, that's pretty much it, guys. That's how we add new bedding or fresh bedding to the worms. That'll add a bit more life to the bins before we have to actually harvest from them. I would say I'm going to wait another maybe 2 to 3 months before I consider, you know, actually doing a complete refresh. With the strategy that we did today, I might be able to pull some of the worm castings that look ready on one side once they migrate to the fresh bedding that we put in. But we'll let you guys know as we continue to decide what the next steps are here.
So we're really curious if anyone who is watching this has, done any sort of worm castings at home before. If you have, drop us a comment. We would love to chat with you. We are still new, as we've told you guys. Everything you are seeing, we have less than 2 years experience at this point when it comes to homesteading across the board, whether it's animals, worms, growing our own food, in the kitchen, etc. All of it is less than 2 years deep. And like Andrew said, the worms, we just started 6 months ago. So we are still learning, but it is just so cool. And we love being able to share it with you guys. And we appreciate the feedback that you give always. So if you have any questions or anything about worms or worm castings, let us know. Andrew will be able to answer those questions for you guys. And until next time, we appreciate you guys so much. And we always appreciate the support. I just cannot express that enough. If you send in a request for seeds, be on the lookout for an email from us this weekend. I'm going to try and respond to everybody and get all those seeds sent out next week. I appreciate you guys so much. We are just so grateful. And until next time, you guys, do not forget our motto here at Little V Farm: anything grows if you try.